the plan is to install NixOS on my framework laptop. I've got a brand new SSD, so if it all goes horribly wrong, I can just go back to where I was with Arch, and let's see what we can do. So what I'm going to do, right, I've been watching guides and they say, oh yeah, here's how to install an operating system, and they do it all on a virtual machine, and I think, great, what about real hardware? What you can do with NixOS though is you can install on the virtual machine, and then you can sort out your config, and then you can install on the real hardware and load the config and get exactly what you had on the virtual machine. I've been to nixos.org/download, and let me see, not the package manager, scroll down, NixOS, the Linux distribution. I have downloaded the Plasma desktop version, ISO image. Okay, here we are in the NixOS ISO image installer. Zoom in. So I'm just going to choose the installer. So far so good. I can change that to British English just to suit my keyboard better. Yeah, we're in London. Yeah, that's the keyboard layout. So I'm just going to use for now the password. Don't require strong passwords for now. I'll just change all this later. Saves me having to hide my password from the camera. And we will have Plasma. There's all sorts of cool new stuff, and I'll get into that later. So one of the nice things with NixOS is hopefully it's a bit easier to chop and change your system just by changing the config file and rebuilding. We'll see. We will allow unfree software. Now, I'm going to choose erase disk. So ignore current. Current is from me playing around before. What I want is swap with hibernate. So the way I did this on Arch was I created a swap file on the encrypted disk. And I was a bit worried that swap with hibernate here would not encrypt the swap partition. However, again, I'm just going to set this for now to password because this is just for the VM. What's reassuring is on the next step, master boot record, okay. It explains very helpfully what it's going to do. Okay, we're creating the MS-DOS partition table. See, I was hoping for a GPT partition table. Let's see what happens. Let's trust it. See, this is the main, it's a 120 gigabyte disk I have. This is the main partition and it's encrypted with LUKS. And here's our swap, okay, which is also encrypted with LUKS. And I assume this size comes from the amount of memory we have, so that the hibernate will work. Let's hope the installer knows what it's doing. Press install. And it's important to encrypt the swap partition because anything in RAM can end up in the swap partition, including your passwords. Let's go back to our installer. Right, installation is complete. I'll press restart now. Done. Now we're back here because I need to mess with the boot settings. I need to boot from the disk and not the CD-ROM. And then I'll just shut down the virtual machine. And I'll run it again. Now, okay, now we're in welcome. Now we're in the grub screen for decrypting the disk image. Decrypting the Lux partition. Okay, default. And we're up. Okay, so here we have our newly installed NixOS fairly minimal. Terminal emulator. So, what do we have? Yep, so everything is different in NixOS. All we have is user bin env. Everything is in the Nix store. So there's a few things I want to set up before I then put this on the real hardware. Let's have a look at so right now I have configuration.nix and hardware configuration.nix. Now I want to go straight in and use Flakes because I've been using Flakes at work, and what it gives you is the lock file. If I make a flake on this machine and then transfer it to another machine, all the versions are going to be the same because of the lock file, which specifies the versions of everything. And the other advantage, which I haven't quite got into yet, is you can easily add other people's flakes to your system and have things coming in from all over the internet. You can import libraries to help you out and other people's packages that are just on their Git repositories a little bit more easily. So let's set up Nix Flakes. Now, have I got network? So let's just have a look. Nix Flakes enable. There we we go, enable Flakes temporarily, enable Flakes permanently. Add the following to the system configuration. So we're just going to turn these experimental settings on. There we go. And to update, we do sudo. To update, we Google NixOS update command. So it's NixOS rebuild switch. Oh, there's one other thing. I want to use unstable. What have I been given here? I think I was confused, so yes, so there is a command. There are channels, but when we are going to do everything with a flake, we're not going to use the channels because the flake inputs will specify where things come from. But right now, if I do next channel dash list, well, there aren't any. Alright, well, let's just update and see what happens. So this should be turning Flakes on now. Let's see, nixFlake. NixFlake requires a subcommand, so something is now turned on. Yeah, I think we have the command. So, before I do much else, I want to convert my system to use a flake instead of just the raw files that are in etc. NixOS. So I'm going to say sudo nano etc. NixOS flake.nix. So a flake. So everything inside some curly braces. Now, on the internet, I have an example of what I want. And as I'll show you my notes, I have notes. I'm not coming in completely unresearched. Checklist for converting a system to Flakes. And this answer is some of the answer. Ooh. Okay. So the inputs, I'm going to live on the edge a bit like with Arch and just have unstable because generally everything works, and if it breaks I can roll back easily. Now, I was confused by this syntax, so I'm going to change this. So my understanding is what we're saying here is the output is a function because of the colon, and it takes an attribute set which has to contain self and nixpkgs, but we kind of want to refer to the whole thing as well, so that the at inputs is saying you'll also be able to refer to the whole attribute set which is passed in by the name inputs. Now I'm going to change this to my host name. Somewhere there is some magic which takes the host name and uses the configuration for that host. So you can have files, if if you have like 3 or 4 computers all running NixOS, you can have the things that are the same in one file and the things that are different in separate files named after their host names. So this is for later, but it seems to me that you have to put the right host name here. And what we're saying is this is a function which is going to build our system. So the NixOS system function takes some arguments. Well, it takes an argument which is an attribute set which contains attributes. Now this line did not work for me. I'm just going to remove this line. Okay. And this is all fine. So this is saying it's x86-64. This did not work for me. Now there's a problem it's trying to solve. What we want is for all the other commands like nix shell to use the same definition of nix packages as the system flake. But I found another way to solve that problem, at least I think, which works. So this is about as simple as you can get it. And then the other thing you can say is we have to say special args equals inherit inputs. Right, okay, we can do this. Special args equals inherit inputs. Somehow or other, these special arguments end up being passed into this module. And the somehow or other is what I'm going to do next, I believe. So this is, all this Flake is saying is, hello, I'm a Flake. My inputs are NixOS unstable from the Git repository. And we're just going to use the configuration.nix file for everything else. That's what I think is going on. Now, it looks like there might be some things I need to add here. Right, I don't know how important this part is, but in my notes, on this line, we have lib, config, packages, and inputs, which presumably come from the Flake, right? That passes these parameters in here. And then one thing I'm going to add is nix.registry.nixpackages.flake equals inputs.nix packages. What I think this is somehow doing is connecting the inputs in the Flake to the Nix registry here. I don't know. I'm following an internet tutorial at this point. I think it works. Now, nothing much is going to change, but now when I do sudo nixos rebuild switch, it's going to detect the fact that there's a flake.nix file, and it's going to use the Flake. And we have an unexpected one of those. In which file? In flake.nix. Have we got one indent too many? We do, don't we? Yeah, there we go. That makes sense. So this is a attribute set. It contains inputs and outputs. Right. Save, yes. Rebuild. So now we're downloading the Nix packages from GitHub, which is different from wherever the operating system gets it by default. And also, I've asked for error. Does not provide attribute packages. I realise what I've done. The thing that's missing is NixOS, right? If I look at this, if I type hostname, I'm still NixOS. So what I've done is I have set this to Thorin here. So let me just change that to NixOS. And hopefully we can fix the host name afterwards. What I'm kind of hoping here is that it doesn't change the host name halfway through this. Oh, that is quite a big job, isn't it? It's like it's rebuilding the entire operating system, I suppose, right, because I've switched to unstable. So it's having to sort of start again with the packages in unstable. While NixOS is updating itself, let's burn an image to this USB stick. Download NixOS target. Oh, it looks like I'm overwriting an old Manjaro ISO. Yeah. Flash. Okay, I have to type my real password now. Right, so we're writing to the flash drive. So that'll come in handy later when we install it to the actual hard disk. That is not the window I was hoping for. Oh. We're still going on this. Okay. I think that has now updated to using the Flakes. If I now look in, etc., NixOS, now there's a flake.lock file. If we just have a look at that. Okay, what it's saying is that nixpkgs is locked to this particular revision, and so if I copy these two files to another computer, I'll get exactly the same revision. So I quite like that. It means I can just keep track of things a bit better. And I think there are other benefits to Flakes, and I think everything is going towards Flakes, and I just think, since I'm starting out with this, let's just start there. And I've been using Flakes for my development environments for work. So what I can do is I can say I want this version of Python, this version of these Python libraries, this version of the Google Cloud tools, and set everything up, including config files, and I can just give that file to some colleagues and they can have exactly the same environment, including the exact versions of everything. So Flakes just seem to make a lot more sense. Maybe it's overkill for this, but if you're going to have a system which you can define the config of in a text file, and it's meant to be reproducible, then it's just nice to have the exact versions reproducible as well. So that's what I think we've got by doing that. So now we're in a position to be able to just hack around in the config file, which is still, so all the Flake does is point to configuration.nix. So we still edit our config in just the same way for now. I've seen lots of complicated setups where people put different things in different files and they have stuff for all their different computers. Yeah, one step at a time. So, a few things I want to be able to do before I put this onto the actual proper hard disk. one thing is that there are hardware tweaks. Laptop quirks, it's called. There are NixOS quirks. Let's see if we can set that up for the framework laptop. NixOS quirks framework. Okay, someone has written how to do it. There we go. Oh, you must install NeoFetch, that's important. It seems to be more about the laptop than NixOS. Right, okay. Okay, let's just look at this quirks business. Hopefully there's instructions how to do it. Using Flake. Oh, here we go. Right, so here we go. Look, so we're going to be adding an input to our Flake. In your flake.nix, add the following. And then add your hardware module from this list. Well, let's try that. So, our input is, so this is something Flakes gives you. This is the wrong file. Not in Vim. So I can just add this as an input. Oops. Still not in Vim. So that's our input. So it's just going to pull this code. And then I guess it's a module. So let's put this, so in Nix language, lists are just white space separated. So I can just do this, and I can add whatever it says here, NixOS hardware equals. So this is where we'll have to say it's a framework laptop somewhere. So where is the list? Ah, here we go. 11th gen. So it's just framework. There's also got 12th gen Intel, 13th gen Intel, and even the 7040 AMD. This is a board I'm quite interested in. Maybe that will be my upgrade path. But the regular one is just framework. Do I put a semicolon there? Let's just check what they've done. No, no semicolon there. So let's just hope this works, because I've never done, I haven't tried this before at all. Yeah. Undefined variable NixOS hardware. Right. Ah, because it's not specified there. So it will be NixOS-hardware. So the way this works is the inputs, this is specifying where to get the inputs from, and some magic happens somewhere, and by the time we call this outputs function, these are passed in as parameters, but it's not just this, it's it fetches it from GitHub, and you have a module which is what's actually passed in here. So you have to say what you're getting. Hopefully I'm right about all that. Flake input attribute NixOS hardware is a thunk, while a string boolean or integer is expected. Well, that's just very Googleable, surely. Well, why hasn't anyone just given me a plain answer to this problem? I realise it's actually totally picky, even thunk. I don't know what a thunk is. Okay, I've got to be honest, this is one of my less favourite things about Nix and NixOS is just the way that, how do you discover things? What have I found out here? I found out, I think this problem is to do with using Flakes in a Git repo without committing. So I know that Flakes like to be in a Git repository. Can I do this? Well, okay, so one nice thing about NixOS is if I don't have something installed, I can just ask for it and get a shell with it. So nix shell -p git, and I have git. And it didn't download anything, so there's a chance that it's using the same version as it would use if the Flake had done it. Gonna solve the problem, I'm not totally convinced. List packages installed in system profile. Yeah. Let's have git. NixOS rebuild switch. I mean, if git is so important, why isn't it installed by default? I'm slightly disturbed that when I did nix shell -p git, it didn't have to download anything, but when I did it inside the Flake, it did have to download it. Like, that tells me the two aren't synchronized properly. It's all my fault, I take it all back. Look at this. Just a confusing error message. I'd forgotten, right, we're already inside inputs, so you don't write inputs dot at the start. Now it works. So there we go. NixOS, brilliant, really confusing error messages. What have we just done? We've added to the configuration. I didn't do the second part. Yeah, you gotta say what your NixOS hardware is. So that's framework. So this is going to do whatever changes to the system are needed to support framework better. Okay, we're building kernel stuff and Intel drivers. Okay, this is quite encouraging. I'm not totally sure how this is going to work on the virtual machine, but right, okay. Right, we have now set up the framework things. Let's take a look at our file system setup. If you type mount and we look at how things are mounted, I'm slightly worried about, here we go. I don't want this rel A time business because we're on an SSD. I want no A time. You don't want to be writing the access time every time you read a file back to the SSD. And I think I want to turn on services.fstrim. So if I type NixOS services.fstrim, there we go. Services fstrim enable, I want that to be true. So let's go to where these set. So this is all stuff to do with the file system. It's just a put it here. Well, this is all network. I'm just trying to put things together. Before we get to networking, we should have disk working, right? It doesn't matter what order it's done in, but I like to have some logic to it. So, file system options for SSD optimization, right? So, equals true. And the other thing I want to do is set the file systems options .next. Yeah. Something like options equals something like this. No a time. That's what it looks like you have to do. Quite how this is going to handle remounting the disk, I'm not totally sure, but let's just assume it's magic and will work. Anything? Oh wow, it actually worked. That's amazing. I'm not sure about NixStore though. Let's go back to that hardware configuration.next. Or could it be that it hasn't remounted? I'm going to reboot it and just see, because I wonder if you can't change the options on the NixStore without rebooting. Maybe. Just curious. So it's remembered all of the... Every time I change it, an option gets added to this menu. So if we stuff it up too badly, we can go back, which is nice. Mount. Let's see. No, it's still... Ah, yes, good. So that's right. I was right. So now I've rebooted. NixStore has been remounted, and that's now no A time. And it's read only, okay. We're getting there. We can get towards more fun things now, because that is everything on my list of stuff to just sort of get right before we can start having fun. Okay, when I say fun, it's all relative, right? So I just add a few packages that I like these days. So there's user packages, but I think Home Manager is going to do this stuff. Maybe, I don't know, do I want to get into Home Manager now? Let's see. So, Helix Editor I'm kind of enjoying a little bit. I'm just assuming these packages exist right now. LSD, people like bat is instead of cat. A bit more colourful. And rip grep is quite handy. And now I'm also using, let's have neofetch here as well. Now what I'm wondering is the config gonna be set up for that as well? There's Steam. Steam might be for later. I think that might be enough to get going. Let's do that switch thing. By the way, Control R, switch. If you don't know about Control R. So this is a bit like doing apt get a bunch of packages I want, except they're in the config file now. Okay. Is it hx. Yeah, we have helix. We have, we need to sort out the fonts for that. We can do this, that, etc. Config. Oh, I'm sorry, NixOS. Flake. Next. There we go. That's a nice, pretty way to print files. What else did I install? RG. Yep. Pattern matching, rip grep. Okay, let's have a play with nerd fonts then. So how do I install nerd fonts? Installing specific fonts from nerd fonts. I guess Fire code ought to do it. Right, so let's just do this. Oh, I guess I can do helix. Now, etc. NixOS configuration. I don't know if this is coloured. Yeah, it's coloured. I guess after localization, really, after X server, after key maps, but before printing, because surely you need fonts before you can print, right? Fonts. I'll just have, I won't bother with the droid ones. Oh, seriously? Palm rejection failure. Oh, come on. Switch. Okay. So I'm guessing my terminal emulator needs to be told somehow to use it. And this brings me to, like, how do you even configure KDE stuff, right? So either it's magic, it's magic. I'm actually quite surprised. I was expecting to have to battle with that. Awesome. That's awesome. Right, cool. The NeoFetch thing. Well, since we're thinking about Home Manager, installation. So don't you follow the normal installation. Scroll down a bit. It says Home Manager works on Flakes as well, so see nixflakes for a description of the Flake-based setup. So all this is when using NixOS, add the following to your configuration.nix and rebuild your system. You want to do this. Okay, sudo hx etc. NixOS flake.next. So I think we want to do something like this, and then under modules we can say all these things. No. Yes, so Home Manager does it. switch. Undefined variable home manager. Oh yes, well, of course, because it's like this again. Come on, home manager. Oh. Yeah, I mean, when I've done Home Manager before, I've done it standalone and it's been fine. And I just think I haven't quite figured out what I'm supposed to do with these flakes. So let's just get everything building again and then we'll come back to this, to it later. I mean, that's something, right? If everything's in a set files. If I break it, I can keep track of what I was doing. Okay, I'm in. Yeah, that should be fine. Create repository. So, this is the first. Do I really want hardware configuration.nix in this repository though? Show commit set up on virtual machine. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay, settings. Okay, git push. GitHub likes that. Yeah, git push origin name. Yes. Okay, so there we go, it's in Git. So now I can forget all this virtual machine stuff. I mean, was there any point in doing that? I think I just wanted to prove the principle that we can set up on one machine and install on another. I did have, it was useful to be able to go to the working system and do things before I wipe it. So, I don't know, I'll stand by that. I think that's probably worthwhile. We can just force off now. We don't care anymore about the virtual machine. We don't care about any of this. I think we can shut down this whole laptop. And we have the USB stick, so let's do that. Shut down. In fact, no, let's... I just want to disclose everything. That's fine. I want to check we can boot from this before I get too far, because I might need to read. I want to swap the SSD and fine, I can't boot. Right, let's swap the SSDs. I'm suddenly worried that my screwdriver doesn't have torques. There. Okay. Yay, okay. Let's see if you can see. Right. There's our SSD. Obviously I could just wipe this, but I've got a just terrible fear that maybe my backups aren't as good as I thought or something. So since I have a spare SSD that's the same, so out with the old, in with the new. There we go. Use that. Put the lid back on. Oh, it's kind of magnetic. Should I do the screws up? There we go. So, now we install. There we go. Oh, did I choose an option or did it defaulted? Okay. Well, it looks similar. It's still saying can't open block dev, but it doesn't seem to matter. Oh, well, that's interesting. Where did that logo come from? Okay, everything's a bit more high resolution now. System is not connected to the internet. I had to quit the installer by pressing cancel and then click here. No, cat. Put the password in. Choose Plasma again. Allow on free software. Swap with Hibernate, and it's chosen 32. Just over 32 gigs of swap, and this machine has 32 gigs of RAM, so that makes sense. So I'll let it do that. ext4, FAT32 boot partition. Okay, now this time it's chosen to do a new GPT partition table, so it's obviously can tell the difference between being on a virtual machine and not. And just to check, did I not choose encryption? Hold on. Encrypt system. And it's very small, but it says create. It's going to create a new GPT partition, 512 megabytes, for NVMe ON1, which is going to be FAT32 for boot. We're going to create the main partition, and then it's going to create swap partition, and it's not saying anything about Lux, is it? Now it's saying creating new Lux partition, so that's good. Oh, what happens if I click that? Oh, I can watch what's going on. It goes from 46% to all done, like instantly. Okay, let's see how fast it is. Just turn the laptop towards the camera. Okay, so I'm hoping I just pull this config and away we go. Let's just make the I mean, will it work? Will it just do everything all in one go? I just thought of something. I probably shouldn't have copied over the hardware file. Let's just look at the hardware configuration.nix. So, this should hopefully just carry on. I think we should be able to revert. Suppose I've discovered a new way to mess it up. Copy over the wrong hardware configuration.txt and then start rebuilding and then quit halfway through. And because you've never run rebuild switch before, you don't have a config to roll back to. Things are zooming up the screen a bit faster. I really do wish this was faster, I have to say. I feel like they could just untar it. Ooh, all done. Amazing. Oh yes, I remember now. I chose a slightly different option. Am I going to be able to get on the internet? Let's do that. Terminal emulator, git clone. Oh yes, git clone. So this time, I still want to make the NixOS original config, and I still want to cp etc NixOS star into there. For this time, cd config cp:/nixOS original config hardware configuration. Okay. Yeah, and I just want to put back in this option here. Which will be here. Like that. And that should be the only difference now. So if I do, can I do diff? Yeah, diff-u hardware configuration. If I compare my hardware configuration with the original, the only difference now is the no A time. So now I can do sudo cp star to etc NixOS, right? Right. Okay, and then let's just do NixOS rebuild switch. Okay, let's see what happens now. I'm going to make it bigger. Oh. So let's take out everything from setup key file down to there. And for some reason we don't need this stuff. Alright. And then we'll do the rebuild. Well, it's getting closer. Oh. Cannot find a grub drive for dev. Well, because there's no dev VDA, is there? What have I done? Yeah, that's wrong, so hopefully I can just I'll replace that with this. So those 3 lines about grub can just be replaced with this. Okay. Well, there's no, oh, because I didn't copy the files yet. Okay. Seems happy, I think. It does seem happy. I'm just going to reboot, just because I think I've changed too much. And now we're back into KDE Plasma. So, we connected to the internet, yes. Do we have, if I go system console, make it bigger, we've got LSD, we've got Helix, what else did I install? We've got our fonts. Right, so with the caveat that there seems to be hardware specific stuff in the config file, I've managed to transfer my working config from my VM to my laptop, and everything is exactly as it should be, which is kind of the whole point of this. Alright, there's one more thing I want to try. Plymouth. Looks like you just need to add these 2 lines for the graphical boot to work. Let's just try it. Just something I've been wondering about. So, etc. NixOS configuration.next. Let's Let's just see if that will work. See if we get anything special. Ah, look at that. That's quite nice. Although I am going to have to stop recording while I type the password. I think if I do any more, it's going to have to be in part 2. I think we've proven a few points. Documentation. Maybe if I actually read the proper documentation. Error messages, not necessarily helpful, but one thing is, once a problem is solved, it ought to just stay solved, because the solution is in the config and in your Git repository for your config. So you figure it out once, and that's it forever, unless something changes. But you shouldn't be having to solve the same problems over and over again. Okay, good night. Well, it's the next day, and I kind of want to have a look at a couple of things. So I was reading this page. This is the dataswamp.org page about making your Flakes and your Nix shell commands use the same Nix packages. So what it's saying is, so there's two commands, nix-shell and nix-shell, and they work differently. The ones with the hyphen in, like the nix-shell, uses the Nix packages in the Nix path environment variable, which should be set to a directory managed by Nix channel, but the channels are obsoleted by Flakes. So I'm guessing we're still going to avoid using channels. Let's just see what my Nix path is. Echo Nix path. Okay, so it is set to Nix var, Nix profiles per user root. Okay, so let's just have a look. Nix var, Nix profiles per user root channels. There's a NixOS in there. Okay, there's stuff in there. So I don't know what that is. But that's interesting. Now, what it's saying is, fortunately, in the same way we synchronize the system Flakes with the command Flakes, you can add this code to use the system Nix packages with your shell. With your Nix shell, okay. What are the system Nix packages then? Okay, well, let's see what happens. Let's try it. So Nix path equals this. So you can add this code. Add it where? I don't know. But let's just see. Let's try. So let's do sudo hx etc. NixOS configuration. Let's put it in here. And I'll just put it, this seems kind of ancillary, I'll stick it at the bottom. Okay. And that's right, that. And then it's saying at this point, so you have to log out from your current session to be effective. So we'll do a rebuild. And we'll accept, log out, okay. And it's saying that these commands should have the same result if it's worked. So let's have a try. Okay, so just to have a look, so when we do nix shell, we're saying, so nix shell gets its nix packages from the next path, and flakes are configured in a different way, and it looks like what we've managed to do is synchronize things so they're the same. So what I'm trying to avoid is when I do things like this, nix shell -pgit, that it doesn't go and download another git from somewhere else. While I'm here, how do we update? Can I just do nixflake update on sudo nixflake update? So such a NixOS. Okay. Now I'm not totally convinced this is the right way to do it, but there's probably a way to do it. I'm not sure there are really wrong ways to do things. So we have updated NixOS hardware and Nix packages. So we've updated both of them, and they are indeed updated. So we've gone from the 4th of November to the 12th of November. So that's updated the lock file. And now if we rebuild and switch, it should take the new changes. Importing framework default directly is deprecated. So this is to do with the actual framework laptop. This is highly relevant to this video. Right, so control. Let's visit that page and see what it's talking about. So something was deprecated in the last few days to do with the framework laptop. What do you mean page not found? Framework. Old behavior. So the error message has the wrong URL. It's deprecation and not deprecated. Right, when the framework profile was created, there weren't other models of laptop. Right. Okay, if you have an 11th gen framework, you need to update to use the framework 11th gen Intel. Okay, well that was a somewhat useful error message. It's taken me to a decently written document explaining what to do. If not, okay, alternatively, yes, okay. So you have an 11th gen Intel framework 13. So well, let's go and sudo nano etc config NixOS Flake Nix. That was where we specified it. So they're saying to use, instead of framework here, we're going to use framework 11th gen Intel. Let's save that. And let's rebuild and see what happens. Okay, quite a lot of building. I suppose all the things like KDE and desktop things tend to get updated a lot. Network Manager I saw. There's probably a way to list what the changes would be. Okay, so just have a look. So I'm on Linux, NixOS 6.1.61, built on November the 2nd, so we'll do shutdown dash now, and see how this comes up. Okay, generation 6 we're on now, built on the 14th. Name-a 6162, built on November the 8th. Okay, so we upgraded the kernel as well. So one thing I want to do is put these changes onto GitHub. NixOS star to here. So there's differences. And that's what I want to commit. So, okay, so I need to just change the remote because I used HTTPS before because I was too lazy to set up the keys. So SSH, copy that. So git remote, something about URL, set URL, origin. So now I should be able to do git commit dash yes, okay. Now there's a way of doing this in Home Manager, I believe. You can actually do it with Nix, but for now I'll just go along with this. But what I want to get into is setting everything as much as possible with the Nix configuration files and not with my own dot files and text files and things. Okay. Fixes and updates for initial install on framework. That's up. Okay, so if I refresh this page, everything's changed. If I look at the commits, so this is what I like, right? We can see exactly what we've done. We've messed around with bootloader settings for the real hardware. We've commented out this. I could probably just delete it. We no longer do this. So there's quite a few changes in the way the boot and the encryption and everything works. This is my setup to synchronize the nixpkgs location. And we had to make this change for the 11th gen Intel. And the hardware configuration is different because it's real hardware. And there should also be the flake.log file should have changed, surely. I wonder why. Okay, well, there we go. So all the checksums for the commits are different for NixOS hardware and nixpkgs. And eventually I'll probably add more inputs as I bring in stuff from other repositories. Okay, so that is how to fix a few things, synchronize the nixpkgs between the different tools, and do an update. And the next thing I want to try and do is get Home Manager working, and then also get the KDE config working, because I think there's a tool somewhere for having your KDE config in a Nix file. Now, one more thing is I haven't fixed the hostname. So if I look in etc. NixOS configuration.nix, so here's the hostname. I like to name my laptops after dwarves. So this is Thorin. And the other place the hostname changes is in the flake.nix, because there's a reference to it here. This is the hostname. Now, if I change this, I don't think it's going to work, because rebuild. Yeah, it's saying there's no NixOS because my hostname hasn't changed yet. So we've got this sort of chicken and egg situation. So I think I have to put this back to NixOS. Then build. What if I rebuild but don't switch? Oh. Rebuild. So you have switch, boot, test, build. Just build. Hostname still hasn't changed. So what if I then switch? Hostname still hasn't changed. Let's try rebooting. Okay, change of location because the sun was shining in at an awkward angle. So I rebooted, the hostname is indeed Thorin, and now if I do a rebuild, now it's complaining that Thorin doesn't exist, so we can go to the Flake file and change NixOS here to Thorin so they now match again. Oops. And hopefully that should, now it will be synchronized. So to change the host name, you're going to have to change it first in the configuration.nix, then reboot so the actual host name takes effect here, and then update the Flake file to match.